scientific studies so that by age 3 there is a gap in brain development between kids who read aloud and those who do not, and children from low-income families are disproportionately impacted by this gap. Making sure all parents know the importance of reading aloud to their children is critical to closing the achievement gap.
The grid-based infrastructure enables large-scale scientific applications to be run on distributed resources. However, in practice, grid resources are not very easy to use for the end users who have to learn how to generate security credentials. There is an imminent need to provide transparent access to these resources so that the end users are shielded from the complicated details. Social media are playing an increasingly important role as information sources for travelers. The goal of this study is to investigate the extent to which social media appear in search engine results in the context of travel-related searches. It also provides evidence for challenges faced by traditional providers of travel-related information. A mental illness is a health problem that significantly affects how a person feels, thinks, behaves, and interacts with other people. People who experience mental illnesses and their family and friends suffer a great deal due to these illnesses. According to the World Health Organization, depression will be one of the biggest health problems worldwide by the year 2020.
Before European explorers had reached Australia, it was believed that all swans were white. Dutch mariner Anthony Can was the first to be amazed at the sight of Australia's black swans on the Shark Bay in 1636. Explorer Willem de Vlaming captured two of these creatures on Australia's Swan River and returned with them to Europe to prove their existence. From that point on, black swans and Australia have been closely linked.
In his landmark account, first published over 20 years ago, the author argues that the ignorance and lethargy of the poor are direct results of the whole situation of economic, social, and political domination. By being kept in a situation in which critical awareness and response are practically impossible, the disadvantaged are kept submerged.
The semiconductor industry has been able to improve the performance of electronic systems for decades by making ever smaller devices. However, this approach will soon encounter both scientific and technical limits, which is why the industry is exploring a number of alternative device technologies.
Legal writing is usually less discursive than writing in other humanities subjects, and precision is more important than variety. Sentence structure should not be too complex. It is usually unnecessary to make extensive use of adjectives or adverbs, and consistency of terms is often required.
The sisters were at a dinner party when the conversation turned to upbringing. The elder sister started to say that her parents had been very strict and that she had been rather frightened of them. Her sister, younger by 2 years, interrupted in amazement. "What are you talking about?" She said, "Our parents were very lenient."
Long isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in the development like the Reformation that many Russians taking pride in their unique culture find dubious value. Russia is, as a result, the most unusual member of the European family, if indeed it is European at all. The question is still open to debate, particularly among Russians themselves.
This book is no ordinary book, and should not be read through from beginning to end. It contains many different adventures, and the path you take will depend on the choices you make along the way. The success or failure of your mission will depend on the decisions you make, so think carefully before choosing.
For diplomacy, the starting point must be that globalization requires bridges and removes barriers. A policy of containment is a difficult strategy in the age of the fiber optic cable, the jumbo jet, and the satellite dish. There will always be the exception, such as the murderous regime in Iraq, where the only safe strategy is to keep it in the isolation ward until it accepts the norms of international behavior, or the military dictatorship in Burma, which has persistently
Since its inception, the UN system has been working to ensure adequate food for all through sustainable agriculture. The majority of the world's poorest people live in rural areas of developing countries. They depend on agriculture and related activities for their livelihoods. This makes them particularly vulnerable to man-made and natural influences that reduce agricultural production.
DeLone and McLean's model has been criticized by some authors. Indeed, this model is specific to contexts of voluntary use of information technology. The usage variable remains a success variable of information systems if the user himself decides to adopt or reject the technology. However, for mandatory uses, such as for ERP systems, the use of the technology is obvious. The success of information systems cannot
What we found is that the plant is actually damaged by herbivores like most plants are in nature, and in response to that it secretes sugar from the wound edges where the herbivores have damaged the plant. Tobias Lortzing is a graduate student at Freie University, Berlin, and one of the study authors.
They controlled for the bird's age, sex, body size, and species, and they found that the hunted specimens' brains were actually 5% smaller, on average, than the brains of birds that died by other means. The surprising thing is that, if you make a similar kind of analysis of liver or heart size, there is absolutely no difference there. So this is specific to the brain.
By this time, however, paleontological momentum had moved to England in 1812 at Lyme Regis on the Dorset coast. An extraordinary child named Mary Anning, aged 11, 12, or 13, depending on whose account you read, found a strange fossilized sea monster, 17 feet long and now known as the Ichthyosaurus, embedded in the steep and 17 dangerous cliffs along the English Clemenson wanted to see if claims of question dodging actually held up historically, not necessarily in the unique case of Trump. So Clemenson analyzed the transcripts of 14 presidential debates from 1996 to 2012. Overall, he found 51 accusations of question dodging, 26 by Dems, 25 by Republicans.
It seems that language appeared from nowhere since no other species has anything resembling human language. However, other animals do possess basic systems for perceiving and producing sounds that enable them to communicate. These systems may have been in place before the appearance of language.
For any marketing course that requires the development of a marketing plan, such as marketing management, marketing strategy, and segmentation support marketing, this is the only planning handbook that guides students through the step-by-step creation of a customized marketing plan while offering commercial software to aid in the process.
Electronic discourse is one form of interactive electronic communication. In this study, we reserve the term for the two-directional texts in which one person using a keyboard writes language that appears on the sender's monitor and is transmitted to the monitor of a recipient, who responds by keyboard.
The quest for a user-friendly copyright regime began a decade ago when the Hong Kong government launched a public consultation on copyright protection in the digital environment in December 2006. Although this consultation initially sought to address Internet-related challenges, such as those caused by peer-to-peer file-sharing technology, the reform effort quickly evolved into a more comprehensive digital upgrade of the Hong Kong copyright regime.
In comparing material with non-material culture, the first being the objects and technologies we create, and the second our customs, beliefs and attitudes, the speaker gives greater emphasis to the material culture. He gives the example of the development of genetic science and the benefits it has brought to mankind, despite a fair amount of opposition.
Psychologist Sahao Tokoge, a graduate student at Kyoto University in Japan, strolls into one of Japan's many cat cafes. These establishments allow customers to pay an hourly fee for the chance to cuddle some cats. They're popular in Japan because so many apartment buildings forbid pet ownership. But Tokoge isn't a typical customer. She's not there for feline affection, but to probe their minds.
The best comparison is likely a magnetar, a young neutron star with a powerful magnetic field, the researchers said. Magnetars also produce bright X-ray flares. While magnetars are thought to be young stars, the two flaring objects in this study reside near elliptical galaxies, which contain older stars. So the objects are likely too old to be magnetars, the researchers said.
When someone commits a criminal act, we always hope a punishment will match the offense. But when it comes to one of the cruelest crimes, animal fighting, things rarely work out that way. Dog-fighting victims are tortured and killed for profit and sport. Yet their criminal abusers often receive a minimal sentence for causing a lifetime of pain.
Bolstered by the result of laboratory experiments, researchers dare to say that gaming might be mentally enriching. These scholars are the first to admit that games could be addictive, and indeed part of their research explores how games connect to the reward circuit of human beings.
Despite many similarities with literary political debates in other nations, there are also ways in which the cultural and political situation in Scotland has left the study of Scottish literature in a significantly different condition from that of literary studies in many other parts of the world.
An environment of rapid change. Technological innovations and increasing business competitiveness has highlighted the growing importance of management development. In particular, the general movement towards great employee involvement and making things happen through people has emphasized an integrating rather than a controlling style of management.
The central idea of this book concerns our blindness with respect to randomness, particularly the large deviations. Why do we, scientists or non-scientists, households or regular Joes, tend to see the pennies instead of the dollars? Why do we keep focusing on the minutiae, not the possible significant large events, in spite of the obvious evidence of their huge influence?
Psychology is the study of cognitions, emotions, and behavior. Psychologists are involved in a variety of tasks. Many spend their careers designing and performing research to understand how people behave in specific situations, how and why we think the way we do, and how emotions develop and what impact they have on our interactions with others.
Efficiency is not your friend when it comes to cognitive growth. In order to keep our brains making new connections and keep them active, you need to keep moving on to another challenging activity as soon as you reach the point of mastery in the one you were engaging in.
Using artificial intelligence, researchers can create photorealistic images from three-dimensional scenery, paving the way for better driving simulators and better testing of driverless cars.
Political scholars had historically recognized the social love of the mass media, the impact of the mass media on the election and governing process has greatly increased over the last 50 years. Tomorrow, the mass media will become the central nervous system for your society and the major source of public information.
Summer research scholarships offer a unique opportunity for external organizations, academics, and students to work together in research. Working with globally recognized researchers in a local setting, students gain valuable real-world experience as well as an insight into what research is all about. Changes in climate affect, for example, the plant and animal life of a given area. The presence of cold beds in North America and Europe along with evidence of glaciation in these same areas indicates that they must have experienced alternately warmer and colder climates than they now possess.
To prevent mosquito-transmitted diseases, approaches based on genetic control of insect populations are being developed. However, many of these strategies are based on highly invasive, self-propagating transgenes that can rapidly spread the trait into other populations of mosquitoes.
Investigations like this one have been plodding along for 40 years, and some studies, like one following the deadly Kobe quake in 1995, have found similar correlations. But study author Aloud Skelton, a professor of geochemistry at Stockholm University, says the unpredictable study subject makes it tough to get funding because you can in no way guarantee a result. So I get 3 years of money, but if there's no earthquake, there's no results.
James Webb Space Telescope was specifically designed to observe this light, which comes from some of the oldest galaxies, to take form. How did delay stars and galaxies take shape? What about the cosmic material that is undetectable, known as dark matter? Is there evidence for it in the early ends of the universe? These are some of the perplexing and fascinating questions that astronomers can begin unraveling with Webb.
deep brain stimulation debents to the superlater branch of the medial forebrain bundle FAB, which is linked to reward and motivation, revealed metabolic brain changes over 12 months post-debents implantation, making it a strong potential therapy for treatment-resistant depression.
Research has shown that the gut microbiome is important for human physiology and health. Disturbances to the composition of the gut microbiome can be associated with chronic diseases such as gastrointestinal inflammatory disorders, neurological, cardiovascular, and respiratory illnesses. The human body has evolved strategies to ensure that a symbiotic relationship exists between the microbes in our gut and our cells. Research has found we pursue more rewards when we become habituated to a higher standard of living and compare ourselves to various standards. What it takes to be happy depends on our prior expectations, but these expectations can change over time.